2 hours. That's how long Kylian Mbappé and the rest of the France squad stood around waiting in the bowels of Philadelphia Stadium while thunderstorms rolled through the Pennsylvania sky, turning a routine World Cup group stage match into something nobody could have scripted. When the players finally jogged back out for the second half, they walked into a different problem entirely: standing water. Puddles scattered across the pitch, and stadium staff out there with squeegees, physically pushing water off the turf while 60,000 fans waited in the stands and a World Cup match hung in suspended animation. Mbappé noticed immediately, and by full time, after putting 2 more goals past Iraq to help France cruise to a 3-0 win, he had something to say about it. So what actually happened in Philadelphia? Why is Mbappé's complaint getting so much attention? And what does it tell us about a tournament already juggling more controversy than any World Cup in recent memory? Let's break it down. Start with the background, because the sequence of events here matters enormously to understanding why this became a story at all. France were already cruising against Iraq when the weather intervened. Mbappé had opened the scoring in the 14th minute with a sharp first-touch finish from outside the box, controlling a pass before drilling it low past Iraq's goalkeeper Ahmed Basel. The match was firmly under French control. Then, right around halftime, referee Drew Fisher made the call as storms began rolling in, and what followed was a delay that stretched on for nearly 2 hours before play could resume safely. For context on the stakes, this fixture mattered considerably to both sides. France entered the match already on 6 points from their opening 2 group games, meaning a positive result against Iraq would all but confirm their place in the round of 32, regardless of what happened elsewhere in the group. Iraq, by contrast, were still searching for their first win of the tournament after picking up 0 points from their opening 2 fixtures, making this a genuine must-win scenario for them if they hoped to keep any realistic path toward the knockout rounds alive, even as one of the 8 third-place qualifying spots. When the teams eventually re-emerged for their second-half warm-ups, the delay still wasn't over. Stadium personnel were out on the pitch with squeegees, working to clear standing water specifically on the eastern side of the field before the match could restart. That detail matters because it wasn't a uniform problem across the entire pitch. One side had been cleared. The other clearly hadn't, at least to the same standard. And that specific side, as it turned out, happened to be the exact area where France had been building most of their attacking play. Here's where things get interesting, because this is precisely the detail Mbappé focused on once the match resumed and reporters got him in front of a microphone afterwards. Television cameras picked up Mbappé repeatedly gesturing toward the pitch during the resumption, pointing out specific areas to French coaching staff on the sideline that he felt still hadn't been properly dealt with once the match resumed. This wasn't a single offhand comment in the tunnel. It was a visible, ongoing frustration playing out in real time as the match continued, with the France captain clearly unhappy with what he was dealing with underfoot in the exact zones where his team was trying to create chances. Speaking to French media after the final whistle, Mbappé laid out his complaint clearly and specifically. He said he wanted both halves of the pitch handled at the same level and pointed out that the area where France had been doing their attacking still had a lot of standing water once the match resumed. That's the core of it, not a complaint about playing conditions in general, but a pointed observation that the cleanup hadn't been applied evenly across the full surface, and that the uneven side just happened to be the one his team needed most. To his credit, Mbappé didn't turn this into a wider attack on the tournament or the venue staff specifically. He was careful to add that he didn't see this as a particularly serious issue, and he wasn't placing blame on the people working at the stadium that day. That's worth noting because it puts his comments in a very different category than some of the louder, more sweeping criticisms that have followed this World Cup since its early planning stages. This was a specific, on-the-record observation about one match, not a broader condemnation of how FIFA is running the tournament. But that's only part of the story, because the timing and context around this complaint connect it to something much bigger that's been building throughout this World Cup. This is the first World Cup match to be significantly affected by a major weather delay of this length, and it's happening at a tournament that has already drawn extensive criticism over its handling of climate-related challenges. FIFA's mandatory hydration breaks, introduced specifically to protect players from extreme heat across several host cities, have generated boos in stadium after stadium since the opening match, with fans and pundits openly questioning why a uniform 3-minute stoppage gets applied even in climate-controlled indoor venues where the original justification simply doesn't exist.
The Philadelphia delay adds an entirely different dimension to that same broader conversation. It's not about heat this time. It's about whether a tournament spread across 16 stadiums in 3 countries with wildly different climates and weather patterns is genuinely equipped to handle the full range of conditions North American summer weather can throw at it. A 2-hour lightning delay followed by a pitch that wasn't evenly cleared afterward is exactly the kind of moment that, fairly or not, becomes a symbol for a tournament already under scrutiny for its handling of logistics on this scale. This matters because of how directly it ties into broader questions that have circulated about World Cup pitches generally throughout this tournament. 8 of the 16 World Cup venues, including the venue hosting the final, both semifinals, and 3 of the 4 quarterfinals, use natural grass laid over a synthetic turf base, a hybrid system FIFA has spent years and considerable resources developing specifically for this tournament. Several players and coaches raised concerns about playing surface quality even before the tournament began, with Harry Kane describing one pitch as dry and sticky during a pre-tournament friendly, and footage of unusually dead low bounces involving the Senegal squad circulating widely in the build-up to kickoff. It's worth putting this in some historical context too, because pitch complaints at World Cups are nothing new, and previous tournaments have weathered similar criticism without it becoming a defining storyline once the football itself took over. Players and coaches have raised concerns about playing surfaces at virtually every recent World Cup, from the heat-affected pitches in Qatar to surface complaints in Russia, and even in Brazil, a country with one of the richest football cultures and groundskeeping traditions on the planet. Professional athletes at this level are creatures of habit, and any deviation from the exact surfaces they're accustomed to at club level tends to generate comment, fair or not. What makes the Philadelphia situation slightly different from that broader pattern is the specific cause. This wasn't a general complaint about turf hardness or grass length. It was a direct consequence of a major weather event combined with an uneven cleanup response, observed in real time, with television cameras capturing exactly which side of the pitch had been properly addressed and which hadn't. That specificity is part of why this particular incident cut through the noise of typical pitch grumbling and became its own standalone story. The bigger issue here isn't really about any single complaint in isolation. It's about a pattern. Heat concerns, pitch quality concerns, now a weather delay exposing uneven ground conditions in a match that mattered. Individually, none of these stories would be especially damaging to how this World Cup gets remembered. Collectively, they're starting to form a recurring theme about whether the infrastructure and operational planning behind this tournament have kept pace with its scale and ambition. Let's make this human for a moment, because behind the headline are real players whose performances depend enormously on conditions like these. Picture being a world-class striker who spent your entire career mastering the first touch, the angle of a shot, the precise weight of a pass, only to find the ground beneath you behaving unpredictably because one half of the pitch was properly cleared and the other wasn't. For players competing at this level, where margins between a clean strike and a miscued one are measured in inches and milliseconds, uneven footing isn't a minor inconvenience. It's a genuine competitive factor that can change outcomes.
And for fans, especially the tens of thousands who traveled to Philadelphia specifically for this fixture, a near 2-hour delay followed by a pitch still being squeegeed during warm-ups is its own kind of frustration, even before considering what it might do to the actual quality of football on display once the match resumed. Here's the genuinely positive note buried inside this story, though, because Mbappe's afternoon in Philadelphia wasn't defined by frustration alone. His brace against Iraq took his career World Cup tally to 16 goals, pulling him level with former record holder Miroslav Klose. On the very same day, Lionel Messi set an even higher new benchmark, scoring twice in Argentina's win over Austria to reach 18 career World Cup goals, putting him 2 clear of Mbappé in what's become one of the most compelling individual storylines of this entire tournament. Mbappé now also sits just 1 goal behind Messi in the race for this World Cup's Golden Boot, with both players scoring 4 goals apiece in the group stage so far. So even with the frustration over the pitch conditions, this was statistically one of the most significant individual days of Mbappé's World Cup career, and it happened on the same day football witnessed a changing of the guard at the very top of the all-time World Cup scoring charts. So where does this leave us heading into the knockout rounds? FIFA hasn't issued any formal response specifically addressing the uneven pitch conditions in Philadelphia, and given that Mbappé himself downplayed the severity of the issue, it seems unlikely to escalate into a formal complaint or a disciplinary matter. The more realistic outcome is that this becomes another entry on the growing list of operational hiccups associated with this tournament, discussed and debated by fans and pundits, but not something that produces an immediate policy change. What's worth watching going forward is whether weather continues to be a factor as the tournament moves into its knockout stages across different host cities. Philadelphia's storm wasn't an isolated meteorological event. Several World Cup venues across the eastern and southern United States sit in regions prone to sudden, intense summer thunderstorms, and if similar delays recur at other venues, particularly ones with similar hybrid grass surfaces, the conversation about pitch consistency and weather preparedness is likely to keep resurfacing. There's also a practical question worth considering about how tournament organizers handle these situations going forward. A 2-hour delay is disruptive enough on its own, forcing players to essentially restart their pre-match physical and mental preparation from scratch. Adding inconsistent ground conditions on top of that delay in the exact area where one team had been generating its attacking threat raises legitimate questions about whether grounds crews have sufficient staffing and equipment to handle rapid turnover situations across a full-width pitch, especially at venues hosting matches involving the tournament's highest-profile teams and players. Whether FIFA addresses this through any formal guidance to host venues before the knockout rounds begin remains to be seen, but it's the kind of operational detail that becomes far more scrutinized the deeper a tournament progresses and the higher the stakes of each individual match become. So here's where things stand. France beat Iraq comfortably and remain on course to advance from the group stage. Mbappé tied an all-time World Cup scoring record on the same day Messi set a new one. And in the middle of all that genuine sporting drama, a 2-hour weather delay and an unevenly cleared pitch became its own small but telling moment in a tournament that keeps generating these kinds of operational stories alongside the football itself. What do you think? Was Mbappé right to raise this, even while playing it down as a minor issue? And does a moment like this change how you think about whether FIFA's host venues, spread across such different climates, are genuinely ready for whatever this North American summer throws at them?